When a coffin is reopened under the orders of a ruthless judge, everyone expects the Black Widow's conviction to be sealed. But the intervention of a mysterious raven promises to unearth a truth so shocking that no one could predict it. The air in the courtroom was as thick as the fog that hung over the city that cold morning. Judge Aurora Thorne, with her impeccable posture and steely gaze, had just reopened the case, not of a physical coffin, but of the defense's hopes, which seemed sealed beneath a tombstone of circumstantial evidence. The room was silent, a heavy quiet that presaged the verdict. Eleanora Vance, the infamous Black Widow, sat at the defense table, her icy beauty unshakable, a veil of mystery that even the court's pressure couldn't pierce. Beside her, Dr. Sophia Mendez, a rookie lawyer with the weight of the world on her shoulders, felt cold sweat trickle down her neck. She had exhausted every resource, every argument, every attempt to sow doubt. The evidence, though indirect, painted a grim picture, and the prosecution had been relentless. Sophia looked at Judge Thorne, who was flipping through the case files with a grave expression. The sentence seemed inevitable. The conviction for concealing a body, even without the body itself, hung like a sword over Eleanora's head. Sophia felt a lump in her throat. She had failed. "Dr. Mendez," Judge Thorne's voice cut through the silence, "the court has carefully considered your closing remarks. The prosecution has presented a robust case, and the absence of the body, while regrettable, does not absolve the accused of responsibility for its concealment, given the evidence presented." Sophia opened her mouth to respond, but the words died in her throat. There was nothing left to say. Eleanora, beside her, lightly squeezed her hand, an almost imperceptible gesture of resignation. It was in that moment of absolute despair that the main courtroom door creaked open unexpectedly. All heads turned. A tall, thin man with disheveled grey hair and piercing eyes stood in the doorway. He wore simple, almost rustic clothes and carried a large wooden cage covered by a dark cloth. "Order! Order in this court!" Judge Thorne boomed, striking her gavel forcefully. "Who are you? How dare you interrupt these proceedings?" The man walked calmly down the central aisle, undeterred. "My name is Elias, and I bring a witness who can unravel the truth about Ricardo Vance's missing body." A murmur rippled through the room. The prosecutor, Dr. Alvaro Costa, rose indignantly. "Your Honor, this is preposterous, a cheap tactic to delay the inevitable, a last-minute witness without prior notice." For an instant, Sophia felt a spark of hope, quickly stifled by disbelief. A witness. Now? And who was this man? Elias stopped before the jury box, the cage in his hands. With a slow, deliberate movement, he removed the dark cloth. Inside the cage, a large, majestic raven blinked its intelligent black eyes at the crowd. A murmur of astonishment and confusion filled the courtroom. "A raven?" Judge Thorne asked, her voice laden with skepticism, but also with a hint of curiosity. "Mr. Elias, explain yourself immediately. What kind of witness is this?" Elias looked at the raven, which tilted its head as if understanding. "Your Honor, this is Corvus, and Corvus possesses an extraordinary photographic memory. He saw what happened. He knows where Ricardo Vance's body is." Prosecutor Costa guffawed, a harsh, disdainful sound. "This is outrageous. An animal as a witness. Are we in a circus or a court of law?" Despite her disbelief, Sophia felt a strange fascination. The raven's eyes seemed deep, almost human. Eleanora, for the first time since the trial began, showed an expression of pure surprise. Judge Thorne, though visibly perplexed, pondered for a moment. The unpredictability of the situation intrigued her. "Mr. Elias, the court cannot accept an animal's testimony. However," She paused, her gaze fixed on the raven's eyes. "If you can demonstrate that this bird possesses such a singular memory capacity that it can offer relevant material evidence for this case, I will consider a brief presentation." Elias smiled, an enigmatic smile. "Thank you, Your Honor. All I ask for is a map. A detailed map of the region where Ricardo Vance's body was supposedly hidden." The courtroom was in shock. The conviction seemed certain, and now a raven was about to become the center of a mystery that promised to unearth a truth so shocking that no one could predict it. Elias's request echoed through the courtroom, a challenge to logic and established order. The ensuing murmur was louder and more indignant than at any other point in the trial. Lawyers whispered, jurors exchanged incredulous glances, and the press, always eager for a scandal, scribbled frantically in their pads. Prosecutor Alvaro Costa, his face red with fury, slammed his hand on the table. "Your Honor, this is an outrage, a circus. We are wasting valuable time with the fantasies of a charlatan and his pet bird. When has a court of law ever relied on a map pointed to by a raven?" Judge Thorne, though visibly disturbed by the breach of decorum, raised her hand, silencing the prosecutor. Her eyes, previously fixed on Elias, now swept the room, assessing everyone's reaction. There was something in the trainer's unshakable calm, and in the almost human intelligence in the raven's eyes, that prevented her from dismissing the situation entirely. Curiosity, a rare flaw in her implacable demeanor, was dominating her. "Dr. Costa, your objection is noted." However, Judge Thorne's voice was firm, cutting through the air. "The court has granted Mr. Elias the opportunity to present relevant material evidence. A map is an inanimate object. What the bird does with it is what interests us. If there is no relevance, the presentation will be immediately terminated, and Mr. Elias will be held accountable for contempt. Bring me a detailed map of the Vance region immediately." A bailiff, visibly confused, hurried to comply with the order. Minutes dragged like hours. The tension in the room was palpable, every breath audible. Sophia felt her heart pound in her chest. It was insane, ridiculous, but a desperate part of her clung to that last, improbable hope. Eleonora, beside her, remained still, but Sophia noticed a slight tremor in her hands, a crack in her icy facade. Finally, the bailiff returned, carrying a large, folded topographical map, its colors faded by time, but still detailed. It was a map of the vast Vance family estate and the surrounding lands, including dense forests, winding rivers, and small country roads. The bailiff unfolded it with difficulty on the central table, where evidence was usually placed. The map covered almost the entire surface. Elias, with a gentle movement, opened the cage. Corvus, without hesitation, hopped out, landing on the trainer's shoulder. Its black eyes swept the room, fixing on the extended map. A sepulchral silence fell over the courtroom. "Corvus," Elias whispered, his voice calm and almost hypnotic. Show us where Ricardo is." The raven tilted its head, observing the map. Elias then, with a finger, pointed to the edge of the map, indicating the vast search area the police had covered. "Here, Your Honor, is where the searches were concentrated." But Corvus saw more. With a gentle nudge from Elias, Corvus flew from the trainer's shoulder and landed in the center of the map. The bird walked with slow, deliberate steps, its claws gently scratching the paper surface. Every movement was observed with terrifying intensity. Prosecutor Costa was pale, Judge Thorne's eyes were wide, and Sophia held her breath. Corvus stopped, its black eyes fixed on a specific spot. Then, with a quick and precise movement, it extended its sharp beak and tapped repeatedly on a small circle on the map. Tap, tap, tap. The spot the raven indicated was a small, dense grove on the border of the Vance property, a location the police had dismissed as inaccessible and of no value to the investigation. It was a spot outside, the initial search perimeter, a place no one had considered. A muffled gasp escaped someone in the gallery. Prosecutor Costa staggered back as if he'd been punched. Sophia felt a shiver run down her spine. Judge Thorne, her eyes fixed on the map and the raven, looked as if she had seen a ghost. Elias, with an enigmatic smile, looked at the judge. "Your Honor, Corvus has spoken. Ricardo Vance's body is there." The courtroom erupted in a chaos of voices, but the revelation had already been made. The Raven, with its supernatural intelligence, had not only unraveled the mystery of the concealment, but had also pointed to a truth so shocking that no one could predict it. The Black Widow's conviction, once certain, now hung by a thread as a new and terrible chapter began. "Order! Order!" Judge Thorne boomed, striking her gavel with a force that echoed through the courtroom walls. The metallic sound, repeated several times, finally managed to pierce the murmur, though the tension remained palpable, like a taut rope about to snap. Her eyes, previously wide with astonishment, now gleamed with cold determination, trying to restore the court's dignity. Prosecutor Alvaro Costa, pale and breathless, was the first to recover from the initial shock. "Your Honor, this is a mockery, a farce. We cannot allow an animal to dictate the course of a trial. Where is the chain of custody, the credibility? It's an unprecedented absurdity." His voice was choked with fury and disbelief. Sofia Mendes, her heart still pounding in her chest, felt a dizzying mix of hope and dread. It was insane, yes, but the Raven had pointed with startling precision to a location even the police hadn't considered. Her eyes fixed on the map, on the small circle marked by Corvus's beak, a dense, almost impenetrable grove on the border of the Vance property, a place that had been dismissed as of no interest. Eleonora Vance, beside Sophia, remained a sphinx, but Sophia noticed that the slight tremor in her hands had intensified. Her eyes, once icy, now held an intensity Sophia couldn't decipher. Was it fear, surprise, or something more? Judge Thorne raised her hand, silencing the prosecutor with an icy glare. "Dr. Costa, your objection is noted, and your indignation is understandable. However," she paused, her gaze sweeping the room, fixing on Elias and Corvus, "the court cannot ignore such a specific indication, no matter how unusual the source. Mr. Elias promised relevant material evidence, and a physical location, pointed to with such precision, could be exactly that." She turned to the bailiff. "Officer, call Captain Silva, head of the investigation, immediately. I want a search and rescue team mobilized to this location." She pointed to the map where Corvus's beak still rested. "Within the next hour, all precautions must be taken. Access is difficult according to the map." A murmur of astonishment rippled through the room. Judge Thorne was truly taking this seriously. "Your Honor!" Costa tried to argue again, but the judge cut him off. "Dr. Costa, the court is suspending this trial until the results of this search are known. The truth, no matter how strange its manifestation, must prevail. If Ricardo Vance's body is found at the location indicated by this bird, we will have a new line of investigation and possibly a new defendant." The judge's last sentence dropped like a bombshell in the courtroom. The implication was clear. If the body was there, and if the concealment was uncovered in such an unexpected way, Eleonora's narrative as the sole responsible party could crumble, revealing the true mastermind behind the plot. Captain Silva, a robust man with a tired face, arrived minutes later, visibly confused by the urgent summons. Judge Thorne, with the help of the bailiff, explained the situation, pointing to the spot on the map. The captain frowned, skeptical, but the judge's authority was unquestionable. As Captain Silva organized his team, Sophia approached Elias, who was stroking Corvus on his shoulder. "Mr. Elias," she whispered, her voice still trembling with emotion. How can he know? How can a raven have such a detailed memory? Elias smiled, an enigmatic smile that didn't quite reach his deep eyes. Nature has its secrets, Dr. Mendez. And Corvus is one of them. He was there, he saw. Ravens are observers, and this one in particular has a special connection to the world of men. He doesn't forget. Sophia looked at Corvus, who blinked its black eyes at her, almost as if understanding. The idea was absurd, but the evidence was there, on the map, and Judge Thorne had accepted the challenge. Prosecutor Costa, still in shock, watched the scene with a mix of anger and despair. If the body were found, his case, once so solid, would crumble. Eleonora, for her part, kept her gaze fixed on the map, a shadow of apprehension crossing her face. The icy facade was finally beginning to crack. Judge Thorne struck her gavel one last time. The court is in recess until further notice. Let the search begin, and let the truth come to light. The courtroom quickly emptied, leaving behind a heavy silence, laden with anticipation. Outside, the morning fog began to dissipate, but a new and dense fog of mystery hung over the Vance case. The search for Ricardo Vance's body was about to begin, guided by a raven, and what would be unearthed promised to change everything. The echo of Judge Thorne's gavel still resonated in the room, a final sound that sealed not only the recess, but an unprecedented turn of events. The courtroom, once a stage of contained drama, now emptied in a whirlwind of murmurs and hurried footsteps. Journalists jostled, cell phones in hand, trying to capture the last image of that bizarre spectacle. Sophia Mendez felt a chill run down her spine, a mix of euphoria and panic. Hope, a dying ember moments ago, now burned with an almost painful intensity. But what if the body wasn't there? What if it was all just a trick, an illusion that would crumble, taking Eleonora's last chance with it? She turned to her client, who remained seated, her eyes fixed on the map. "Eleonora," Sophia whispered, her voice hoarse. Are you all right?" Eleonora Vance finally tore her gaze from the map, her eyes meeting Sophia's. The intensity Sophia had noticed earlier now seemed clearer. It was an internal struggle, a battle between the mask of indifference and a raw emotion that threatened to overflow. "All right," Eleonora replied, her voice low, almost inaudible. "Sophia, my life is about to be turned upside down by a bird. How could I be all right?" A bitter, almost imperceptible smile crossed her lips. But perhaps it's the only way. Sophia couldn't decipher her tone. Was it resignation, relief, or a deep fear of what the truth would bring? She squeezed Eleonora's hand, a gesture of silent support. Across the room, Prosecutor Alvaro Costa stood, his hands clenched into fists, his face red with contained fury. He exchanged venomous glances with Elias, who, oblivious to the hostility, continued to stroke Corvus. The raven, perched on his shoulder, seemed to observe the scene with an almost human intelligence, its black eyes gleaming. "This is a legal aberration, Elias," Costa snarled, approaching. "You'll pay dearly for this charade." Elias merely smiled, a calm smile that disarmed Costa's anger. "The truth is no charade, Dr. Costa. It merely manifests in ways your mind perhaps isn't prepared to accept." Captain Silver, meanwhile, was already on the phone, giving concise and professional orders. Despite the evident skepticism on his face, Judge Thorne's authority was unquestionable. "Yes, a full team, search and rescue equipment, difficult access on the border of the Vance property. I want everything ready to depart in 20 minutes. He hung up, running a hand over his tired face. "Dr. Mendez, Miss Vance, the bailiff will escort you out. I need to get ahead." As they left the courtroom, the media buzz intensified. Camera flashes exploded, microphones were thrust forward. "Dr. Mendez, what's your reaction to the trial's suspension?" "Miss Vance, what do you expect to be found?" Sophia tried to shield Eleonora, who, with surprising dignity, merely kept her gaze fixed straight ahead, ignoring the storm around her. Outside, the morning fog began to lift, revealing a pale and undecided sky. Police vehicles already clustered in the street, sirens off, but with an imposing presence. Captain Silver gestured to his men, pointing to a map that had been quickly printed. The dense forest, almost a dark stain on the landscape, seemed to swallow the light. Sophia watched the activity, her heart pounding. That grove, once a footnote in the investigations, was now the epicenter of everything. What did it hold? What had Corvus seen? The truth, promised by the judge, was about to be unearthed. And Sophia knew that for Eleonora, for Ricardo Vance, and for justice itself, nothing would be the same after that unexpected expedition. The search team, led by Captain Silver, departed towards the Vance property, their vehicles cutting through the fog, carrying with them the last hope of unraveling the mystery. For Sofia Mendes, leaving the courtroom was a blur of flashes and hysterical voices. She struggled to guide Eleonora through the crowd of journalists, who swarmed like vultures, eager for any crumb of information. Eleonora, surprisingly, maintained an almost supernatural composure, her eyes fixed on a distant point, as if the hysteria around her didn't touch her. "Dr. Mendes, what do you expect to be found? Miss Vance, do you fear what the raven indicated?" Questions rained down, but Sophia merely shook her head, shielding her client. The bailiff cleared a path, and they finally reached the car, waiting for them. Inside the vehicle, the silence was heavy, broken only by the muffled sound of the city. Sophia turned to Eleonora, her heart still pounding. "Eleonora, where do you want to go?" "Home." Eleonora sighed, an almost inaudible sound. "No, not home, not now. Too much is at stake. Can we go to your office, Sophia? I need a place where I can think, where I can... wait." Her voice was a thread, but the determination behind it was undeniable. The icy facade was cracked, but not broken. In Sophia's office, the atmosphere was one of unbearable suspense. The phone, silent, seemed to scream. Sophia tried to focus on papers, but her eyes repeatedly returned to Eleonora, who sat in an armchair, her hands clasped in her lap, her gaze lost out the window. The fog outside began to dissipate, revealing a pale sky, but uncertainty hung like a dark cloud. Do you really believe they'll find something?" Sophia asked, her voice hesitant. Eleonora turned, her eyes meeting Sophia's. There was a depth in them Sophia had never seen before. "The Raven wasn't wrong about the map, Sophia. And Elias, he has a conviction that cannot be ignored. If Ricardo is there, then the truth will come to light. And it won't be the truth everyone expects." A chill ran down Sophia's spine. The implication was clear. Eleonora knew more than she had revealed. Meanwhile, Prosecutor Alvaro Costa was in his own office, furious. He threw a handful of papers onto the desk, the sharp sound echoing in the room. "A raven, a damn bird. This is a sick joke." He angrily dialed a number. "Captain Silver, it's Costa. I want to know every detail of this search. Don't let that charlatan Elias manipulate them. This is a farce, and I'm going to prove it." Far from there, on the border of the Vance property, Captain Silver's search team faced treacherous terrain. The dense, damp grove was a labyrinth of twisted trees and undergrowth. The fog still clung to the treetops, creating a dark and oppressive atmosphere. The men, initially skeptical, now worked with professional seriousness, sweeping the area indicated on the map. "Captain, the GPS is a bit unstable here," one of the officers reported, struggling to maintain the signal. "It's right in the middle of nowhere." As the map indicated, Silver nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. "Keep going. Maintain formation. If the Raven was right, Ricardo Vance's body is here, and if it is, we'll have a much bigger problem than we imagined." Hours dragged on. In Sophia's office, the silence was almost palpable. Eleonora remained motionless, a statue of contained anxiety. Sophia paced back and forth, her heart in her throat. Every minute that passed felt like an eternity. Suddenly the phone rang, cutting the silence like a knife. Sophia jumped, the sound making her flinch. She looked at Eleonora, who now stared back, her eyes wide, a raw and untamed emotion finally visible on her face. Sophia picked up the phone, her hand trembling. "Hello?" Captain Silver's voice on the other end of the line was tense, almost a whisper, but charged with unmistakable gravity. "Dr. Mendez, we found something. It's the body. Exactly where the raven pointed." A cold shiver ran through Sophia. She looked at Eleonora, who was now standing, her hands clutching the fabric of her clothes, her face pale. The truth, promised by Judge Thorne, had been unearthed, and with it, the certainty that nothing would be the same. The Grove had kept its secret, but the raven, Corvus, had finally revealed the location of Ricardo Vance's body, opening Pandora's box to a much deeper mystery. A wave of shock ran through Sophia, chilling her to the bone. The raw and untamed emotion Sophia had glimpsed before now erupted, a mix of relief, terror, and a profound sadness that seemed to tear at her mask of indifference. "Eleonora," Sophia whispered, her voice choked, unable to say more. Eleonora closed her eyes for an instant, a heavy sigh escaping her lips. When she opened them, there was a painful resignation, but also a spark of something new, something Sophia couldn't identify. "So, he was there all along," Eleonora murmured, more to herself than to Sophia. "Just as I knew he would be." The veiled confession hit Sophia like a lightning bolt. Eleonora knew, not just suspected, but knew. What did that mean? Was she guilty, or was there an even darker truth behind everything? "Captain," Sophia managed to say, turning her attention back to the phone, her voice still trembling. What happens now?" "We're isolating the area," Silver replied, his voice grave, professional, but with the tone of someone who had just witnessed something disturbing. "Forensics are on their way. Judge Thorne has already been notified. The court will reopen tomorrow morning, and Dr. Mendez, prepare yourself. This is going to be big, very big." Sophia hung up. The silence of the office falling back like a heavy shroud, but now laden with a new and terrible certainty. Ricardo Vance's body had been found. The raven had not failed. "Eleonora," Sophia began, her voice firmer now, though her heart still pounded. "You need to tell me everything. What do you know? Why did you say he would be there?" Eleonora walked to the window, observing the sky that now opened to a pale blue, as if the fog had carried away the uncertainty, leaving only the brutal clarity of truth. "I didn't kill him, Sophia," she said, her voice low but charged with unshakable conviction. "But I know who did, and I know why the body was hidden in that specific place." She turned, her eyes fixed on Sophia's. Ricardo wasn't the man everyone thought. He had many secrets, secrets that, if revealed, could destroy many lives, including mine. Sophia felt a chill. The story was becoming much more complex than a simple case of body concealment. "Who, Eleonora? Who killed him? And why didn't you say anything before?" Eleonora hesitated, the internal struggle visible on her face. "I was afraid, Sophia, afraid of that person's power. Afraid that if I spoke I would be next, and also afraid that no one would believe me. All the evidence was against me." She paused, a deep sigh. "But now the body has been found. The raven proved I'm not a liar about the location. Perhaps now people will be willing to hear the full truth." Meanwhile, in Prosecutor Alvaro Costa's office, the phone rang. He answered with an air of impatience. Costa, any news on this farce? Captain Silver's voice on the other end was cold and direct. Prosecutor, we found Ricardo Vance's body, exactly where the Raven indicated. A shocked silence hung in Costa's office. His eyes widened, his face paling. What? Impossible. Where? On the border of the Vance property, sir. Forensics are on their way. Judge Thorne has already been informed and has called an emergency session for tomorrow morning. Costa hung up the phone, his hand trembling. He sat heavily in his chair, initial anger replaced by a chilling dread. The Raven was right. Eleonora Vance hadn't lied about the location. This meant that the charge of body concealment, which had seemed so solid, now transformed into something far more sinister. If Eleonora knew where the body was, but hadn't hidden it, then who did? And why was she being framed? The implication was clear. There was a killer at large, and the plot was far more intricate than he had ever imagined. The Vance case, which he thought he had in his grasp, had just exploded in his face, revealing an abyss of secrets and betrayals. The truth, as Eleonora had suggested, was not what everyone expected. And now, with Ricardo Vance's body unearthed, the real hunt was about to begin. Sophia felt the weight of Eleonora's words hang in the air, dense and laden with unspoken truths. The widow, her eyes fixed on the pale landscape outside, seemed to have shed a layer of her armor, revealing a vulnerability Sophia had never imagined. "Eleonora, please," Sophia insisted, moving closer. "You have to give me more than that. Secrets that could destroy lives? Fear of this person's power? Who is this person? What are these secrets?" Eleonora turned slowly, her eyes meeting Sophia's. There was a depth in them, a history of pain and silence. Ricardo. He was an ambitious man, Sophia. But his ambition knew no bounds. He got involved with dangerous people who operated in the shadows of high society, illicit dealings, information manipulation, extortion. He had a file on each of them, a file he called the life insurance. Sophia felt a chill. The life insurance. He was blackmailing someone. Not just someone, Eleonora corrected, her voice almost a whisper. He had information that could bring down empires, destroy untouchable reputations, and he wasn't afraid to use it. He believed it made him invincible. A bitter smile twisted her lips. But invincibility is an illusion, isn't it? And the body. Why that specific location? Sophia asked, her mind racing to connect the dots. Because it's a place Ricardo knew well. A place he used for clandestine meetings, Eleonora explained, her voice choked with memory. And it was a place that, for the person who killed him, held significance. A message. The body was hidden there to frame me, Sophia, to make it seem like I, the betrayed wife, had killed and concealed him, but also to warn me, to tell me that they knew I knew. You knew he was there? Sophia asked, her voice almost inaudible. Eleonora nodded, a solitary tear tracing a path down her cheek. I saw, not the murder, not the concealment, but I saw the person who did it in that place on the night Ricardo disappeared. I was there for a different reason, a reason that doesn't matter now, but I saw, and the person saw me. I fled, terrified. I knew that if I spoke, I would be next. And who would believe me? I was the Black Widow, the prime suspect. The shock hit Sophia hard. Eleonora not only knew, she had witnessed part of the event. Who? Eleonora. Who did you see? Eleonora closed her eyes again, her body trembling slightly. It's someone with great power, Sophia. Someone above the law. Someone Ricardo had threatened with his life insurance. If I say the name now without proof, without your protection, they will come after me, and after you too. Sophia felt the weight of responsibility. Eleonora's life, and perhaps her own, depended on how they played their next cards. We need a plan, Eleonora. Tomorrow morning, in court, you'll have a chance to speak. But we need more than just your word. We need proof. The proof is in Ricardo's life insurance, Eleonora said, opening her eyes. There was a spark of determination in them now. I know where he kept it, but it's a dangerous place, and I can't go there alone. Meanwhile, in Prosecutor Alvaro Costa's office, chilling dread had transformed into contained fury. He paced back and forth, the phone still in his hand, though the call with Silva had ended minutes ago. The Raven. That damned Raven had destroyed his perfect case. The charge of body concealment, which had seemed an easy victory, was now a cruel joke. Impossible, he muttered to himself, his fists clenched. Eleonora Vance isn't that clever. She couldn't have planned this. But the implication was clear. If she knew where the body was and hadn't hidden it, then she was being framed. And if she was being framed, there was a real killer, a killer he had ignored. His phone rang again. It was Judge Thorne, her voice as cold as ice. Prosecutor Costa, I hope you are prepared for tomorrow. This case has just taken an unexpected turn, and your office's credibility is at stake. Costa swallowed hard. Yes, Your Honor, I will be prepared. He hung up, sweat trickling down his forehead. The image of his career, built with such effort, crumbling before his eyes. Eleonora Vance was no longer just a suspicious widow. She was the key to a much larger mystery, a mystery he was now obliged to unravel. He needed to find the real killer, and he needed to do it before Dr. Mendez and Eleonora Vance made him look like a complete fool. Back in Sophia's office, the night wore on, but sleep was an impossibility. Sophia sat facing Eleonora, a notepad in her hand, scribbling frantically. So, the life insurance is the key, Sophia repeated, her voice firm, but with a hint of excitement. Where is it? Eleonora hesitated, looking at the door as if expecting someone to overhear. In a safe, at Ricardo's old summer house. It's an isolated place, rarely visited. Sophia nodded. We need to retrieve it before tomorrow's session. It's our only chance to turn the tables. But we need to be discreet. If the killer knows, we're after it. Eleonora, do you trust me? Sophia asked, her eyes fixed on the widows. Eleonora looked at Sophia, at the young lawyer who had fought for her against all odds, who had believed in the madness of a raven. A spark of hope, mixed with fear, gleamed in her eyes. Yes, Sophia, I trust you. The clock on the wall marked the early hours of the morning. Time was running out. Judge Thorne's emergency session was just hours away. The truth was about to be unearthed, and with it, the revelation of a powerful killer and their dark secrets. The hunt had truly begun. Sophia stood up, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Then there's no time to lose. We need to go now. Eleonora nodded, determination now overcoming fear. Yes, now. The two women exchanged glances, a silent pact sealed in their eyes. They knew they were throwing themselves into unknown danger, but it was Eleonora's only chance, and perhaps justice's only chance. The early morning was a dark canvas dotted with indifferent stars, and the cold night air cut their skin as Sophia and Eleonora left the office. The silence of the sleeping city was broken only by the distant sound of a car and the accelerated beating of their own hearts. Sophia felt the weight of responsibility, but also a surge of adrenaline that propelled her. Where exactly is this summer house, Eleonora? Sophia asked as she unlocked her car, a modest but reliable model. It's about 2 hours from here, inland, near Blue Lake, Eleonora replied, her voice choked but with a new firmness. Ricardo used it to isolate himself, to conduct his business away from prying eyes. It's well hidden, in a wooded area. The drive was tense. The silence in the car was filled with both their thoughts. Sophia reviewed the case details, the pieces fitting together in a frightening way. Eleonora, beside her, seemed like a statue, her eyes fixed on the dark road, as if seeing ghosts in every shadow. "Are you sure no one else knows about this safe?" Sophia asked. Breaking the silence after almost an hour's drive, Eleonora shook her head. Ricardo was paranoid. He trusted only himself, and me to a certain extent. But he never told me the exact contents, only that it was his life insurance, and that I should know where it was, just in case something happened. A bitter irony. He gave me the instructions to find it years ago as a kind of trust test. I never imagined I'd have to use them one day. The asphalt road gave way to a dirt track, and the trees began to close in around them, forming a dark tunnel. The headlights barely penetrated the dense foliage. The air grew damper and colder. "It's around here," Eleonora murmured, pointing to an almost invisible trail to the right. Sophia slowed down, turning the wheel cautiously. Branches scraped the side of the car, and the darkness was almost total, save for the flickering light of the headlights. Finally, a clearing opened, revealing an old wooden house, almost swallowed by vegetation. Dark, dusty windows looked like empty eyes. "We're here," Sophia said, turning off the engine. The silence that followed was heavy, almost oppressive. They got out of the car, the rustle of leaves under their feet, the only sound. The smell of damp earth and old wood hung in the air. Eleonora took a flashlight from her bag, which she had prepared. "The front door should be unlocked," Eleonora said, her voice a whisper. "Ricardo never bothered to lock up here. He said no one would come to this godforsaken place." The door creaked with a ghostly moan as Eleonora pushed it open. The house's interior was dark and dusty, with furniture covered by white sheets, like silent ghosts. Eleonora's flashlight danced across the walls, revealing cobwebs and abandonment. "Where is the safe?" Sophia asked, her voice low, feeling a chill down her spine. The sensation of being watched was almost palpable. "Ricardo said it was in a place only he would consider safe," Eleonora replied, guiding them to a small library at the back of the house. Dusty books filled the shelves, and the smell of old paper was strong. He had an obsession with classical literature. Eleonora ran her hand along a bookshelf, her fingers brushing the spines of the books. "Here. He always said the truth was hidden in plain sight, but few would bother to look for it." She stopped before an old edition of The Count of Monte Cristo. With a firm pull, the book slid out of the shelf, revealing not an empty space, but a small button embedded in the wood. Eleonora pressed the button. With a soft click, a section of the bookshelf slid aside, revealing a small, dark opening in the wall. Inside, a discreet old metal safe. "That's it," Eleonora whispered, her voice filled with a mix of relief and dread. Sophia felt her heart race. The key to everything was there, just inches away. But the sense of danger didn't diminish, it only intensified. They were in the lion's den, and the lion knew they were coming. "Do you know the combination?" Sophia asked, her voice almost inaudible. Eleonora nodded, her fingers trembling slightly as she spun the safe's dial, the clicks echoing in the house's sepulchral silence. Each turn was a drumbeat, announcing the truth that was about to be freed. The tension was unbearable. Time was running out, and with each passing second, danger drew closer. Eleonora's fingers trembled, but the memory of the combination, etched by years of Ricardo's paranoia, was perfect. The slow, deliberate clicks of the dial sounded like the ticking of an old clock in the house's sepulchral silence. Finally, with one last soft click, the latch yielded. Eleonora pulled open the small metal safe door. The interior was dark, but Sophia's flashlight revealed a single object, an aged, thick leather folder, heavy, with a rusted metal clasp. The smell of old paper and mildew emanated from the compartment. "That's it," Eleonora whispered, her voice almost inaudible, reaching out to take the folder. Her fingers brushed the cold leather. Sophia carefully took the folder, feeling the weight of the truth in her hands. She placed it on a nearby dusty table, undoing the clasp with a snap. Inside, there was a stack of meticulously organized documents, photographs, and in the center, a small metal flash drive. Ricardo was a man of details, Eleonora observed, her voice choked. He would never leave anything to chance. Sophia began to leaf through the papers, her heart pounding in her chest. They were bank statements, records of obscure financial transactions, encrypted emails, and conversation transcripts. Each document was a piece of a dark puzzle, and then she saw it. A name that made the air leave her lungs. "It can't be," Sophia murmured, her face drained of color. It was a name she knew, a respected name above any public suspicion. The name of an influential senator, a prominent figure in politics known for his anti-corruption campaigns. Senator Almeida. Eleonora gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. Almeida, but he was Ricardo's friend. They were always together at charity events. Friends, perhaps. But this dossier tells a different story, Sophia said, pointing to a series of large sums of money transferred from offshore accounts to shell companies linked to Senator Almeida, all brokered by Ricardo. There were also photos of Ricardo and Almeida in secret meetings, in locations that didn't align with the senator's public image. The flash drive, Sophia presumed, would contain the audio recordings Ricardo had mentioned. Ricardo was blackmailing the senator, Sophia continued, her voice tense. He had proof of corruption, money laundering, and something more. She flipped through a few more pages, finding private investigation reports about an old car accident, which had been filed as a fatality, but which Ricardo seemed to have revisited. It seems Senator Almeida had many skeletons in his closet, and Ricardo was their keeper. The silence in the house was broken by a distant sound, almost imperceptible at first. An engine. Sophia and Eleonora exchanged glances, cold fear returning with full force. "Someone's coming," Eleonora whispered, her eyes wide. "We can't stay here," Sophia said, quickly grabbing the flash drive and the dossier. She shoved them into her bag, adrenaline coursing. "We need to go, now!" The sound of the engine grew closer, clearer now, the crunch of tires on the dirt road. It wasn't a car passing by, it was coming for the house. "They knew," Eleonora said, her voice trembling. "They knew Ricardo had this, and they must have realized we would come." Sophia wasted no time. "Let's go, out the back door." They ran through the dark house, the rustle of sheets covering the furniture sounding like ghostly whispers. The back door was jammed, but Sophia forced it open, and they emerged into the darkness of the forest. The car engine was now very close, and headlights swept the clearing. "Run, Eleonora!" Sophia shouted, pulling the widow by the hand. They plunged into the dense woods, their hearts pounding wildly, the dossier and flash drive bouncing inside Sophia's bag. The truth was in their hands, but the hunt for them had only just begun. Senator Almeida would not let his secrets come to light so easily. The court session was just hours away, and the race against death was real. The cold night air cut their faces as Sophia and Eleonora plunged into the dense forest. Branches snapped under their feet, and low branches scratched their clothes. The beam of light from the approaching car's headlights swept the clearing behind them, momentarily illuminating the dark silhouettes of figures emerging from the vehicle. "Are they armed?" Eleonora whispered, her voice choked with panic and exertion. Sophia didn't answer, focusing on running, pulling Eleonora by the hand. She wasn't sure if they were armed, but the intention was clear, to prevent the truth from reaching the courtroom. The dossier and flash drive thumped against her body inside her bag, a weight that was both a hope and a curse. The sound of male voices and rustling leaves drew closer from behind. They were being hunted. "We need to split up," Sophia gasped, stopping abruptly behind a thick tree trunk. "They'll surround us if we stay together." Eleonora shook her head, her eyes wide. "No, I won't leave you alone. I know this forest better than you. There's a shortcut to the main road, but it's treacherous." Sophia hesitated for a second. The idea of splitting up was terrifying, but Eleonora seemed to know the terrain. "All right, but we have to be quick. Court starts in a few hours." They resumed running, Eleonora leading the way through the undergrowth and twisted trees. The darkness was almost total, and Eleonora's flashlight, which she had dropped in her haste, was lost. Sophia stumbled several times, feeling scratches on her arms and legs. Fear was a knot in her stomach, but Eleonora's determination was contagious. "This way!" Eleonora pointed to a narrow crevice between two moss-covered rocks. "It's a dry creek bed. It leads to a secondary road." They slid down the crevice, the descent steep and dangerous. The sound of their pursuers seemed to lessen slightly, but Sophia knew it was only temporary. They wouldn't give up so easily. Senator Almeida had too much to lose. As they descended, Sophia thought of Judge Thorne, of her severe expression, and the pressure she herself felt. If they didn't arrive in time, or if they were caught, Eleonora would be condemned, and the truth about Almeida would never come to light. Justice would be trampled. Finally, they emerged onto a wider trail, which seemed to be an old service road. The moon, now higher, filtered through the treetops, offering a pale and ghostly light. "The main road isn't far," Eleonora said, exhausted, leaning against a tree. "But how will we get there? There are no cars here." Sophia looked at the watch on her wrist. Almost 3 a.m. Court started at 9, 6 hours. It was possible, but every minute counted. "We'll have to walk to the main road and try to hitch a ride," Sophia decided, her voice firm despite her exhaustion. "We can't stop now." The sound of a branch snapping behind them made both women freeze. It wasn't the main pursuers, but someone was nearby. "They followed us," Eleonora whispered, panic returning to her eyes. Sophia pulled Eleonora, pushing her behind a dense bush. They held their breath, listening to cautious footsteps approaching. A dark figure passed along the trail, just a few feet from where they were hidden. It was a large man, a flashlight in his hand, sweeping the darkness. Sophia's heart pounded so hard she feared the man could hear it. Eleonora was huddled beside her, trembling. The man stopped, seeming to sniff the air before moving on, disappearing into the darkness. Phew! Sophia exhaled the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. That was a close call. "He was one of Ricardo's bodyguards," Eleonora said, her voice still trembling. "He was loyal to Ricardo, but I don't know who he'd be loyal to now." The revelation added a new layer of complexity and danger. If Ricardo's own men were involved, Almeida's network was even deeper. They waited a few minutes, ensuring the path was clear before venturing out again. With each step, the urgency mounted. Adrenaline kept them moving, but exhaustion began to weigh them down. Finally, after what seemed an eternity, they saw the distant lights of the main road, a thread of hope. "There!" Sophia pointed, feeling a momentary relief, but the road was deserted. No car in sight. The early morning was cold and silent, save for the sound of the wind in the trees and the frantic beating of their hearts. "We'll have to wait," Eleonora said, disheartened. Sophia shook her head. "We can't. Every minute is precious. We'll walk. Someone will appear." They began to walk along the roadside, the headlights of a car approaching in the distant horizon. It was their chance. Sophia raised her hand, signaling desperately. The car slowed, and hope bloomed in their chests. But as the car approached, it wasn't an ordinary vehicle. It was a black SUV with tinted windows. And it didn't stop. It merely sped up, passing them at high speed, kicking up a cloud of dust. "Damn it!" Sophia cursed, discouragement washing over her. "They're looking for us everywhere," Eleonora said, her voice almost a lament. "We won't make it." Sophia clutched the dossier in her bag, feeling the weight of responsibility. We will make it, Eleonora. We can't give up now, not after all this. The race against time and against Senator Almeida's hidden forces was far from over. The sun would soon begin to rise, and with it, the day of the trial. They had to reach the courthouse, no matter the cost. Eleonora's life and the truth depended on it. Hope dwindled with each step in the darkness of the road. The cold of the early morning penetrated their bones, and exhaustion threatened to fell Sophia and Eleonora. The sun began to peek over the horizon, painting the sky in pale shades of pink and orange, a cruel reminder of the dwindling time. "We won't make it, Sophia," Eleonora murmured, her voice hoarse with exhaustion, her eyes fixed on the asphalt ahead. "They won." Sophia stopped, turning to Eleonora, holding her shoulders. "No, we won't give up. Not now. Ricardo didn't die in vain. The truth has to come to light." Her eyes, though tired, burned with fierce determination. "We will make it, I promise." As she spoke, the sound of an engine slowly approached from behind. It wasn't the powerful roar of an SUV, but the softer, steadier hum of a medium-sized vehicle. They turned, and a delivery van, with the logo of a local bakery, appeared on the horizon. "It's our chance," Sophia said, raising her hand and waving desperately. The van slowed and stopped a few meters ahead. A middle-aged man, wearing a cap and a white apron, looked at them with curiosity. "Trouble, ladies. Are you lost at this hour?" "We need to get to the city courthouse urgently," Sophia explained, her voice breathless. "It's a matter of life or death, of justice." The baker, a simple man named Jorge, hesitated, but the urgency in Sophia's eyes convinced him. "Hop in. I'm heading to the city to deliver bread. I can take you there." The relief was palpable. They got into the van, the smell of fresh bread filling the air, a surreal contrast to the danger they had faced. Jorge didn't ask many questions, just drove, occasionally glancing in the rearview mirror. The journey seemed an eternity, but with each kilometer covered, hope rekindled. When they finally reached the city, the clock on the van's dashboard read 8:45 a.m. "Thank you, Jorge," Sophia said, extending her hand to him. "You have no idea what you've done for us." "I just did what I thought was right," he replied with a gentle smile. They got out of the van and ran towards the imposing courthouse building. The square was already crowded with reporters and onlookers. The buzz was intense. Inside, the court was already in session. Judge Aurora Thorne, with her impassive expression, was about to pronounce the sentence. The prosecutor, confident, awaited. Eleonora, pale and exhausted, sat beside Sophia, who took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the dossier and flash drive in her bag. "Dr. Mendez, do you have anything to add before this court reaches its conclusion?" Judge Thorne's voice was cold and authoritative. Sophia stood up, her body aching but her mind sharp. "Yes, Your Honor. I have new evidence to present. Evidence that not only exonerates my client, but also reveals the true mastermind behind the concealment of Ricardo Vance's body and a vast network of corruption." A murmur rippled through the room. Senator Almeida, who was seated in the front row as an illustrious observer, frowned, a flicker of concern crossing his face. "New evidence? At this late stage?" Judge Thorne raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "I hope it is substantial, Dr. Mendez." Sophia walked to the podium, taking the dossier and flash drive from her bag. "These are the proofs Ricardo Vance gathered before his death, Your Honor. Bank statements, encrypted emails, investigation reports, and most importantly, audio recordings." She handed the dossier to the clerk, who took it to the judge. "And what do these recordings contain?" the judge asked, taking the flash drive. "The voice of Ricardo Vance, Your Honor, and the voice of Senator Almeida," Sophia declared, pointing to the senator, "detailing a scheme of money laundering, corruption, and, most shockingly, the truth about the accident that claimed the lives of one of his political opponent's family years ago. Ricardo was blackmailing the senator, and that's why he was killed and his body concealed. The courtroom erupted in murmurs and exclamations. Senator Almeida rose abruptly, his face red with fury. "This is preposterous, a slander. This woman is making everything up to save her client." "Silence!" Judge Thorne struck her gavel forcefully. She inserted the flash drive into the court's computer. Ricardo Vance's voice echoed through the room, clear and unmistakable. "Almeida, you can't just get rid of people who bother you. The Silva family accident wasn't an accident, and I have the proof. You're going to pay for this, or all of it will come to light." Senator Almeida's voice responded, cold and calculating. "Ricardo, you're playing with fire. There are secrets that must remain buried, and if you don't understand that, perhaps you yourself will end up buried." The silence in the room was deafening. Senator Almeida's face was white, his eyes wide. Judge Thorne listened with an expression of growing shock, her eyes fixing on the senator. "Your Honor," Sophia continued, her voice firm, the raven that at first seemed a distraction, led us to Ricardo Vance's body, and Ricardo Vance's body led us to this truth. Eleonora Vance was a victim, not an accomplice. She was used to conceal the crime of a powerful man who wanted to silence Ricardo forever. Judge Thorne turned off the recording, her severe eyes fixed on Almeida. "Senator Almeida, you are under arrest for obstruction of justice, corruption, and as the primary suspect in the murder of Ricardo Vance and the Silva family." Police officers moved quickly to arrest the senator, who tried to resist but was restrained. The room erupted in applause and shouts of shock. The flashes of reporters' cameras exploded. Eleonora Vance, beside Sophia, collapsed in tears of relief, embracing the young lawyer. "You did it, Sophia. You did it." Sophia, exhausted but with a sparkle in her eyes, looked to the corner of the room. There, perched on its stand, was the raven, the mysterious Corvus. It watched her with its intelligent eyes, as if it knew everything, as if it had been the true guardian of justice all along. It let out a soft caw, almost a nod, before its trainer covered it and led it out. Justice finally had been served. The widow Eleonora was free, Senator Almeida unmasked, and Dr. Sofia Mendez, the rookie lawyer, had proven that the truth, however deeply buried, always finds a way to light, sometimes with the help of an unexpected ally with black wings.